In this section, we will talk about collaborative user story creation. So what is the user story first? User story is a way of typing requirements that is used commonly in Agile. This is the way that we write user stories. We say, as a person, I want to do something so that I can obtain some benefit. So one requirement, for example, as a person who is preparing for the ISTQB exam, I want to study for the exam so that I can pass it. This is a requirement that is written in a user story format. So this is it. As a persona, I want to do something so that I can derive a reward. In Agile, we care about collaborative user story creation, which means that all of us give some input on writing user stories, not the business analyst writes it alone. One of the major reasons for project failures is poor specifications. The requirements is not clear or not testable or anything like this. Why does this happen? Because sometimes the user doesn't understand their true needs. He doesn't have a vision for the system. Maybe there are redundant or contradictory features or anything else. In Agile, we write user stories from the perspective of developers, testers, and business representatives. This way, in sequential models, this is hard to do. We do this through formal reviews after writing requirements and testing them, like static testing. But in Agile, we said this way is better because from the beginning, while we are creating requirements, we do this process, we do this step, which involves developers, testers, and business representatives giving input on requirements writing. While we are writing user stories, we must address both functional and non-functional characteristics of the system, and each user story should have something which is called acceptance criteria. Acceptance criteria is something like the test cases. What makes this user story successful? The acceptance criteria should be written also in collaboration between business representatives, developers, and testers, but sometimes you as a tester write it alone. So when can we say that the user story is done? When its acceptance criteria is complete. The tester in the user story creation will give us a great value because he will give us a unique perspective that will improve the user story creation, and he may give us some missing information that we didn't notice about non-functional requirements. Also, the tester should ask some open-ended questions about the user story. How can we implement it? What is the use of it? What are the other user stories that are dependent on it? And so on. These questions lets you make sure that this user story is written in a correct way. We may use some techniques in writing user stories like brainstorming and mind mapping, and you as a tester might use a technique which is called invest technique that we will talk about in the next section. Now let's consider something which is called the 3C concept. 3C means using the letter C 3 times in the creation of the user story, which is card, conversation, and confirmation. What is the card? The card is a physical card that the user story is written on it. So we should write for each user story, like we said, an acceptance criteria, expected time, so that it has a good description. If we are using a tool, all of these things are written inside our tool. The second thing is the conversation. We must have a conversation about the user story. How will we execute it? How will we say that it is done? What is its acceptance criteria? Are the acceptance criteria enough or not? Then the confirmation, which means the acceptance criteria. We talked about the acceptance criteria in the conversation. Now we need to make sure that the acceptance criteria is enough. The acceptance criteria should cover both positive and negative tests, and it also should focus on both functional and non-functional testing.